I grew up in a time where we were still being sold a job for life, and the choices were limitless. You could be whatever you wanted to be, in theory. Bearing in mind, I grew up in a working class village in a working class town and went to the local comprehensive. This wasn't really specifically true, but they were selling you the dream. But if you worked hard enough, you could achieve your dream. I didn't realise when I was at school in the 90s, the situation that the generations before me had had, where they did have a guaranteed job for life, didn't really exist anymore. It had become much more profits over people. And I have always really enjoyed working. I got my first job when I was 14, which was legal at the time. I'm not sure it's legal now, but it was definitely legal in the 90s. And I worked Saturdays and school holidays at a Chinese food factory, putting lids on egg fried rice. And I really enjoyed it. I was stood on the production line holding my little wodge of lids, you know, the silver takeaway containers. And as these containers of egg fried rice would pass me by, I'd be dealing the lids out like cards. You know, and I was like 14-year-old, 15-year-old earning £2 an hour for doing this, stood on my feet for like 8 hours. But I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed earning the money, and I saved up for my first Sony Walkman, cassette Walkman, by the way. And I thought it was great. Do this stuff, you get money for it. I'm well up for that. And I've never been unemployed. That's not a flex. There are many people unemployed, not through their own choice. I think it was a lot easier to find jobs when you were younger back then as well. It was almost a rite of passage in the town that I lived, that everybody at some point would end up working in McDonald's.
Hi, I'm sorry, mate.
Should we eat first?
It's a good idea.
We'll try that new place down the road.
I do like Chinese, I just don't know if I fancy it now.
But you like Chinese.
I could handle a spaghetti, definitely.
Not in that tie, you know. You don't want Chinese, you don't want fish, you don't want a hamburger. What do you want?
Something different.
Made with 100% white-breasted chicken, mayonnaise and iceberg lettuce. When you want a change, you want a McChicken sandwich.
That's a good film.
I've seen it.
Have you? When?
Because they were always hiring and there were lots of teenagers to fill the positions. So I've always liked earning and I've always liked spending. Does anyone remember QuickSave? I worked in QuickSave. I've worked in fashion retail, I've worked in call centres, I've sold car insurance, I've worked in a gym, I've worked in a bakery, in a cafe, a library, a Zumba instructor, yeah I know, Zumba instructor. And I went back to uni as a mature student and studied graphic design. And the big one I've left out so far is I used to be a prison officer at Holloway, which I'm not sure if they've knocked it down now. Now that was an interesting job. I really loved it to begin with, I really did. I think that is the longest job I've ever had. At 6 years I lasted there. But all the big proper jobs that I've had over a year, let's say, have all ended the same way. Start strong, loads of enthusiasm, people seem to like me, I relax, I learn the job, I learn the systems, and then from my point of view, I get frustrated with the systems because I can see things that don't necessarily work as well as they could. So I would point out these flaws to my superiors, which I thought was a good thing. But from a management point of view, I became a trouble causer, difficult, a know-it-all, uncooperative. These are a few of the choice words that were shared in various meetings I had with managers. And I think this is sort of true for me in life situations in general. Like the way that I come across to people and the way that I genuinely am seem to be at complete odds to each other. And it's something that I've really struggled with and have now just come to terms with over the years. Like, I like being right. I like being correct. I like having the correct information about something. It makes me feel safe. And if I don't know something, I'll go and research it. I'll try and find out that answer. And I've got absolutely no problem being wrong. And I want to be pointed out when I'm wrong about something, because then that means that I can correct what I'm doing and then be right, if that makes sense. But this always tends to come across as though I'm self-righteous or a know-it-all, or I look down on people, or I enjoy correcting them and get some sort of a kick out of it, which is like bizarre to me, because why would you not want the correct information about a situation or how to do something? I don't know, I struggle to make sense of it, but I have got better at keeping my mouth shut as I've got older. In my 20s, my mouth just tended to run. I would have a tendency to talk first and then wonder why not many people liked me, because I'd offended them in some way or caused some sort of discomfort or missed some sort of social cue that I wasn't even aware was happening. And a really good example of this was when I was a prison officer and we'd had this big group meeting, and my manager's manager was there, and it was all about rallying the troops and pulling together. We're all one big team because we were basically skint and short-staffed. So there was no holidays being approved. There was no toil being approved. Toil stands for time off in lieu. So if you did an extra shift, instead of getting paid overtime money, it would be an extra day's holiday. But there was no overtime getting paid because they were skint, and there was no new staff being hired because they were skint. So it was all this pulling together, camaraderie, very much an uplifting type meeting. And they said they were going to divide up all the spare shifts equally and spread them out between all the members of the team. Not management, obviously, just us lowly prison officers, so that we could cover the rota and nobody would be left short. I sort of sat there and absorbed this, and everybody smiling and nodding and agreeing. And my brain is like this, it feels like a pinball machine. And I have a thought here and a thought here, and they're sort of pinging off against the barriers in the pinball machine, and ding, 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 ding. And my mouth opens before my brain can kick in to allow for any sort of social awareness, talking to my manager's manager here and the higher ups. And I just said, so this is forced overtime then? We're not getting paid, we can't have any time off, and if we don't use our holidays and toil before the end of the year, then we lose it. We can't carry it over. And the atmosphere changed. You would think I just pulled my pants down and urinated in front of them, and my manager and my manager's manager's faces just changed. And the only extra piece of information you need to get this is in my department there were probably about 30 members of staff, I think, and we used to do our own rotas, our own schedules, however, rather than having a standardised one given to us that we followed. We basically worked it out, so we did 4 16-hour shifts in a row, which was grueling, but then you got 4 days off, so it was 4 on, 4 off, something like that anyway. And when I'd actually shut up, quick as you like, my manager said, well, you'll be back to a normal shift pattern then, which seemed a bit snarky. If you're not going to help out in our time of need, you can't have your cushy shift pattern system. And long story short, he left, the meeting was over. I didn't really realise sort of what I'd done. I was like 24. Half of the people that I worked with were sort of like on my side, so to speak. The other half were like, oh, why have you done this? You should have shut up and just gone along with it, because they wanted to keep the cushy shift pattern that we had, despite the fact that they were then going to end up doing 5 on, 4 off, 4 on, 4 off, 5 off, I don't know, whatever. They were going to do more, and they probably weren't going to get paid for it or get the toil. But needless to say, I didn't have a filter. This was sort of the beginning of the end of this employment, which was a shame because I did actually get a lot out of being a prison officer. It helped mould me as a person. I learned so much about so many different ways people live their lives and things that they'd been through. It was good for me as a person, for my growth. But you know, that was it. I was labelled not a team player then. And another, what is it, an analogy or a metaphor? I don't know. I think I saw a TikTok where somebody talked about like if you were part of a crew on a ship, you know, like an old-fashioned pirate ship, galleon affair, and your job was to work below decks, hammering wood to the walls where all these holes would randomly, magically appear, and you'd keep repairing the ship and you'd keep bailing out the water. And my brain sends me to go up and talk to the captain and say, hey, where are these holes coming from? Can't we prevent the holes from appearing in the first place? And then we wouldn't all be wasting our time repairing the holes. And I still kind of don't get how the working world doesn't want people that try to solve problems. They only want people to sort of shut up and get on with what they're supposed to be doing. And again, I hope this doesn't come off as me thinking I'm better than anybody else, because I'm very definitely not. This is just how my brain works, and I really struggle to not think like this. But once I've been in a job for a certain amount of time and I've seen the flaws, as I perceive them to be flaws, peeked behind the curtain, so to speak, and realised that actually nobody cares, I become frustrated, disinterested and bored ultimately, I suppose. I feel like I'm wasting my time on tasks that could be prevented or done in a more efficient way. So I'm stressed, depressed, end up taking sick leave and then handing in my notice. So working from home has been really good for me because I'm my own boss essentially, and it's not a regular paycheck, which can be quite stressful sometimes, but I get out what I put in. And the only caveat to this is now I have a child. Obviously I would have to do whatever was necessary to make sure that there was always food on the table. And if I had to go out and clean toilets for a living to make sure that he had clean clothes, then I would do that. My mental health would probably also be in the toilet, but that's the commitment that you make when you decide to have a child. So, and why would I make a video on why I couldn't keep a job? Part of what I want to do on this channel is to normalise the less normal and vocalise the experiences that I've had or the things that I'm currently going through, in a hope that it might speak to somebody out there and make them feel like a bit less of a weirdo. But if you're just interested in watching the videos I make about what colour nail varnish I happen to have on this week, then that's totally cool too. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will see you on the next one. Bye.